Hi,
Hi, how are you?
I'm
Hi,
okay, thanks. How are you both?
Good.
doing well. Thanks for having us, Daniel.
Thanks, I really enjoyed the film. So I was
Ah,
wondering, what inspired you to make the film about a killer sloth, and how did you come up with the idea?
You take it this time.
um, well, me and Brad love silly stuff just in general. Brad, grew up doing stand-up comedy. I grew up in a big Irish clan of very silly people who like to joke, and grew up on a lot of Saturday Night Live and a lot of like the classic comedy. So me and Brad, we'll start there. Like we love silly things, and Brad, I think, was on a vacation with a friend, Bob, this amazing guy in Florida that he was visiting. And he challenged him to think of the dumbest thing he could think of. And that is what came out of Brad's brain was a killer sloth movie. And then when he came back to Los Angeles, we were getting a coffee. We've been longtime friends and creative partners on some stuff prior to starting our company. And we were having coffee, and he knows we've worked on stuff, but I was going back to Chicago to go to grad school, and he pitched me this, just the title. He was like, Slotherhouse. And I was like, I looked at him and I was like, I'm in. Like, I'm totally in. He's like, yes. So it started just out of a fun, like, we used to pitch each other a lot of ideas creatively. We would just go back and forth and pitch. And but we stuck with it, and here we are.
That's really cool. So can you tell me, as you both worked on it together, how do you collaborate with the writing process?
Yeah.
Yeah. So really, that's a really interesting question because, like most writers, we don't like to collaborate. Uh, so when I presented the stuff to Cady originally, I presented, yeah, obviously the version that I wanted to see, and which is great. But Cady was like, I think we could go to a bigger audience here if we made some changes. Which I said, fuck you. Sorry, I don't know if I could say that. That's that's writers' responses. But what Cady did, she's a really strong business person, and she I don't want to go into the full story, but she presented some information to me on data and like who likes sloths, and where that's at. Where is the popularity coming from? All the internet buzz on it, and I was like, it literally changed my mind, and I was like, holy crap, she's right. Um,
Yeah,
and
but
then that refocused.
I also have to say that, like, Brad is a great listener, right? Like, some writers have a really hard time adjusting when notes do come in. And I've never known somebody who is determined as him to tell a story in whatever vein or lane that is needed to be told. Like, he has the agility as a writer to really craft sort of the same story with different ingredients. And it was a joy to work with him and to build this together. But really, Brad is just a great writer, and so it made the creative process, once we kind of got on the same page about the overall sort of picture of it, just really fun to play with. Yeah.
I also liked how it had lots of messages in it as well about like being popular and stuff like that.
Well,
And
we
like,
wanted to, we really, this is one thing that Cady and I talked about again when it was transitioning from what it started off as, and it and became what you saw is like, look, horror is such a fun genre because you can play around with absurd ideas. I mean, if you think of almost every horror icon, they're almost all ridiculous. So it's great in that way. But one of the things where I think a lot of horror movies don't capitalize on, and I hope we did, but we wanted to really have strong thematic premises. We wanted to have actual lessons in there, fun things to at least consider, if nothing else. And we wanted our characters to have strong arcs. So we really pushed for that.
yeah. Can you tell me more about how the sloth was made? Like, was it CGI, a puppet, or what was it? A real?
Yeah, so I can definitely jump in on that. And I love that you asked if it was for real. For real. Just gonna throw it in. We're just in a punny mood, I'm just
Yeah.
throwing it in. Yeah, what we didn't do it with any sort of, so no real sloths were harmed in the making of this movie. That should be very clear up top. But me and Brad were challenged with the decision of, do we do this just with the effects, or do we do this something and go down the practical effects road? Ultimately, we chose to do it with practical effects, and we had the honor to work with a really amazing longstanding effects house in the industry, Creature Effects, which is where Alpha was born. Baby Alpha was born in Creature Effects. And it was a journey for us because we'd never been on the production side of things. And so I had some experience because my uncle's really involved in the practical effects world, Dan Lanigan, with sort of that, but it was both. I think a lot of learning for me and Brad, and there was a lot of challenges, but I think what really brings the film home in a really special way is actually that we did do this with a puppet, right? So it feels more real. There's a life to Alpha. There's a character to Alpha that I think you can get really close with VFX, but me and Brad are a little biased because we grew up on movies like Gremlins and all these amazing, you know, I watched like Lamb Chops as a kid and Gullah Gullah Island, all these like puppet, you know, and we love doing practical effects. So it was hard, right, Brad? You want to talk about some of the challenges a bit?
Oh, it's incredibly hard. I mean, we definitely did not hit the easy button. We decided to make an Americana movie shot in Serbia with a puppet.
And British actors.
British actors. So it's like, it's not the easy button. But yeah, whenever you're shooting with the puppet, I mean, you have to plan for more time. You have to rehearse way more than you would have to otherwise. And also there's limitations to what a puppet can do. So even though it sounds good on the page, with VFX, you can't just, you know, provide that to the VFX people that are developing the asset and say, hey, this is what we need it to do. And they tell you how to shoot it. But you actually, like with the puppet, there's some things like, oh, that's not going to be possible, especially under these constraints, period. So it definitely made it much more challenging, which I suppose that's a moment where I got to lead into our director. Our director, Matthew Goodhue, was the perfect director for this because, quite frankly, with the challenges of a puppet, you have to have a director that is willing to put countless hours into the pre-production and pre-production stage of planning out every single shot in advance.
Yeah. And having the patience to be able to, you know, look with puppets, it's like there's time frame issues on set. There's just time frame issues because there's mechanical issues with the puppet. There's, you know, there's issues with the serve. You know, there's also performance issues where sometimes the puppet will do a certain move. At one point, the puppet's head fell off. We were like, we need to get our second puppet in, and we got to fix the head. So Matthew Goodhue just had such a solid stance and was so patient and was so great with our crew and with the actors. Like without his leadership on set, I think this would be a very different movie. And I think that has a big part to do with the success of the film as well.
And my final question before we go is, if there was a killer sloth in your room, how would you kill it?
Right now with this pen.
There was a killer sloth in my, you know what? Honestly, I'm going with the, because of where I'm physically at right now, I'm going with the throw it out the window. Or I do have a bunch of blades right here from my hobby. I suppose I could maybe stab it, but who knows if it would work.
We want to know, what would you do, Daniel, if there was a killer sloth in the room right now?
I'm not sure. I may run towards it or just run away from it.
Good option.
Anything near me to chuck at it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for this interview. I really enjoyed the film and I can't wait to see your future projects.
Thank you
Have a good
so much. Thank you
Bye.
for your interest.
Thank you, Daniel.